When we sit down and really start to peel back the layers of NFL Week 1, when we start going through the odds, the matchups, and the underlying storylines, there's just something about it that grabs you right away because this is the week where everybody feels like they've got a shot, where hope is still alive, where Vegas is setting the tone and daring you to figure out what's real and what's a mirage. And I want to take you inside a couple of these games that jumped off the page to me, games that maybe at first glance don't look all that shocking. But the more you dive in, the more you start to realize the value, the risk, and the narratives that will define this opening weekend. And let me start with Seattle because my feeling on Seattle is complicated but confident. I like them. I like Sam Darnold in the sense that I think he's a guy who can hold the ship steady. But what I really like about Seattle isn't even tied to Darnold or their quarterback situation. It's about their coach. It's about the culture. It's about the fact that this is a roster that has more athletes in their prime than people want to admit. And when I look at the line, Seattle at home getting 2.5 points, I just find myself confused, almost scratching my head, because this is a division rivalry game. And division games historically are tight, hard fought battles where points matter more than anywhere else. And I love taking the points in division games because even average teams in these rivalries, think of Pittsburgh over the years against Baltimore, have found ways to cover against much stronger rosters simply because the familiarity, the physicality, and the intensity make everything closer than the odds makers project. And that's why, to me, Seattle at home plus points is not just intriguing, it's my favorite pick of the week. Because you factor in the 49ers' health issues, you factor in the injuries at wide receiver, you think about the fact that if San Francisco is going to win this game, it's going to be through the ground game. And that's not something you can lean on exclusively when you're facing a team that has improved its pass rush and has legitimate athletes up front. So while the market, the odds makers, and even a lot of analysts seem to believe Seattle is a long shot, I look at this roster and I see something else entirely. I see a team that has quietly built a foundation of speed, toughness, and balance. And when you add the fact that Hwanga is gone, Greenlaw is gone, Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey are not in their absolute prime anymore, it really tips the scales towards Seattle. And yet the line says otherwise, which tells me the market is sleeping on them, maybe because the divisional odds have them as a 5-1 long shot compared to the 49ers at plus 150. But if you actually step back and look at the last couple of seasons, Seattle has been consistently solid. 9 wins, 10 wins, right there in the mix. And Vegas seems to be pretending that those wins didn't happen, giving them almost no chance to win the division. And that's where the value is. That's where the sharp money should go. Because Seattle isn't being respected. And when a team with that much talent and that kind of coaching pedigree isn't being respected, you jump on it. And I know from personal experience, betting on San Francisco can burn you. Because when you bet against them, they show up and win. And when you bet on them, they collapse at the wrong time. So I tend to stay away from the Niners in general. But if you force me to look for a long shot with value on the board, there's no better option than Seattle 5-1 to win their division. A team that has proven they can get to 10 wins, a team that has done it in back-to-back years, and a team that Vegas still refuses to take seriously. And when I think about the Rams being treated like some elite 13 or 14 win powerhouse when Seattle literally matched them in the win column, it just doesn't make sense. It's almost disrespectful. And that's what makes this line, this moment, this week 1 matchup so fascinating. Because yes, the 49ers are talented. Yes, they're well coached, but they're also fragile. They're also a team that can lose half their key players to injury at any moment. And Seattle feels like the steadier option, the team that can grind out wins, that can capitalize on matchups, and that can make a statement right out of the gate. And while I do think divisional games in week 1 are tricky because nobody has fully settled in, I also believe Seattle has the advantage of flying under the radar, of being underestimated, and of having the chip on their shoulder that San Francisco doesn't. Because for the first time in years, the Niners are not being hyped as the unstoppable juggernaut. Instead, they're being questioned. They're dealing with quarterback uncertainty. They're dealing with injuries, and you can tell they're vulnerable. While Seattle, with Kenneth Walker, if he's healthy and Charbonnet in the mix, has a running back duo that can balance their offense and keep them from being one-dimensional. And that's critical in a game like this because you know San Francisco is going to try to establish the run. That's in their DNA. But if Bosa is dinged up and their personnel isn't as dominant as it used to be, they're not the same defensive machine. And sometimes we fall in love with the idea of the 49ers defense because of what they were over the last 4 years. But right now, today, they don't have that same depth on the back end. They don't have the same across-the-board personnel, and that means Seattle can attack, can find mismatches, can dictate tempo, and the more I look at this matchup, the more I see Seattle not just covering the spread, but winning outright. Because the combination of home field, health, and underrated talent puts them in a perfect position to strike. And while I admit that the 49ers have a history of finding ways to grind out ugly wins, this just feels like one of those games where the public perception is misaligned with reality, where the narrative has been built on outdated assumptions, and where Seattle can remind everyone that they're not just a middle of the pack team, they're a legitimate playoff contender with upside. And as I branch out and look at the broader week one slate, there are other games that carry similar intrigue, like Chicago at home getting a point and a half against Minnesota. And that one fascinates me for different reasons because Chicago is the underdog at home, which historically is a position bettors like. But the real question is about Caleb, about the rookie quarterback stepping into the spotlight, and about what this Bears team is going to look like when it matters. Because Minnesota is a mystery. J.J. McCarthy is still unproven, and while Chicago's defense has been hyped up, I'm not convinced they're as good as people thought a year ago. So if this game turns into a low-scoring battle, like a 17-14 grind, I lean Minnesota. I lean Brian Flores' defense because Flores has proven time and again he can scheme up confusion, he can rattle young quarterbacks. And in a game like this where the margin is so slim, coaching and defense tilt the scale. But at the same time, if Chicago loses at home in week one, the city is going to unravel quickly. The headlines will be brutal, the pressure will mount, and the season could spiral faster than anyone expects. Because the expectations are sky high, anything less than 9 wins feels like failure. And if they start 0-1 at home against a divisional opponent, it's going to get ugly. But that's why week one is so powerful, because it's not just about the standings, it's about momentum. It's about the psychological tone it sets. And when you think about the energy in Chicago, the pressure in Minnesota, and the uncertainty around Caleb, you realize that this might be the single most emotionally charged game of the week. And I say that even as I look at other matchups like Tennessee, a team that convinces itself every year it's a playoff team, but by week 4, the cracks start to show. Or Green Bay, or Jacksonville, or even Dallas, who I just can't bring myself to believe in this particular week, because while some games feel unpredictable, others feel like traps. And that's what makes this opening week so fascinating because every fan base is convinced their team has hope. Every roster feels healthier and deeper than it will 3 weeks from now. And every odds maker is trying to find that sweet spot between perception and reality. But if you're asking me for the one line, the one game that stands out above the rest, it's Seattle at home plus the points because it combines everything you want as a bettor: value, narrative, underestimation, and the chance for a team to make a statement. And while I know betting week one divisional games can be a roller coaster,